And welcome to the 700 Club Canada, Brett Ullman. How are you, my friend?
I'm doing really well. How are you doing?
You know what? With the pandemic and all of the things that are going on, I really feel encouraged, and also getting an opportunity to talk to you because there's so much that is taking place in the world right now. And I believe that you have a really good perspective and also a position to speak to parents and also youth. You know, we're talking about parenting, navigating everything, and I think the pandemic fits that description. What about you?
I think the pandemic has really exacerbated conversations of like parenting and mental health. So I think it's a season for those conversations for sure.
You know, when you talk about conversations that people don't like to have, I know that's one of the statements that you have. You know, talk to us a little bit about your faith journey, Brett, and help us understand how you came to where you are right now, from being a teacher to now speaking to this issue with such clarity.
Yeah, I was a teacher with the Toronto District School Board for about a decade. Taught, if you're in the Toronto area, I taught in the Melbourne community of Scarborough. And it's interesting. Speaking was not something I looked towards. It was something that I spoke once and then I spoke twice and then 7 times. And like my wife's a nurse. I was a teacher. That was kind of our life. And suddenly we found ourselves, little kid at home, pregnant wife, and I'm speaking 45 dates a year and teaching full time, which is just not sustainable. And so I left teaching 15 years ago now, and this is actually my job. Usually we'd be sitting in, a studio somewhere doing this, but this is kind of me. I travel and I speak on kind of a lot of the current issues that I think we often don't like to talk about today. I'm also married with 2 kids. I got a grade 12 daughter, and for the parents of grade 12s, it's been a fascinating year. Loss of prom, loss of graduation. She's heading off to university next year. Don't know what that will be like. And I got a grade 12. My son Ben's heading into grade 12 next year. So fascinating times we're living in, for sure.
Oh, fascinating. How did Christ come into your heart, Brett?
It's interesting. Some people have a day and they'll say, like, it was this specific day. I grew up in the church, great Christian family. I grew up at a church in Pickering. To me, one of the things that really brought me close to faith was humanitarian trips. I grew up at a Baptist church called Bayfair Baptist, and we went on humanitarian trips every year from my grade 9 year till I was in university. And there's something about seeing and living out faith in other places and then coming back to Canada and just realizing that we live in kind of this bubble. That to me was kind of the impetus and the growth of my faith. And then adding camp onto that, I'm a huge fan of like faith-based camping in Canada. My son's actually up at a camp right now, volunteering for a few days. But that for me was kind of the beginning. Then met my wife, and now we've been attending a church called Sanctus, which is actually used to be called C4, but we've been there about 14, 15 years.
Wow, amazing. I remember speaking at Bayfair Baptist so many times as well with Athletes in Action when I was playing with the Toronto Argonauts. And,
I remember those days.
Deja vu. Yeah, I knew you would. When you talk about parenting, navigating everything, what inspired you, you talked about those speaking dates, and in Melbourne, I know Melbourne very well, and you left school and you went into really the fire. What prompted you to write this piece?
This book came from, like, I speak topically. Mental health, sexuality, pornography, dating, men, like they're topical conversations. And there was this growth where I'd speak on mental health and somebody would ask me about pornography. And I realized there's just so many things people are looking for good, practical information on. But it was one night, Brian, that changed everything. Father came up to me after my talk, speaking on mental health, and he said, "Brett, how do I talk to my daughter about sex?" Great question. And I went to answer, and he said, "Oh, sorry, by the way, she hates me." And I was a speaker. I just paused for a sec, and I said, "What do you mean she hates you?" And he said, "No, forget about that. How do I talk to her about sex?" And I'm like, no, forget about sex. What do you mean your daughter hates you? And I realized that I don't talk about having a relationship with your kid. And if you don't have a relationship with your kid, you are not talking to your kid about sex. And so I realized that there's this foundation that we're missing, which is where the beginning of this book came from, because it's 6 chapters on parenting. And then realizing that once we have this relationship, we still have to navigate everything. There's still those pathways we have to take and speak on all those things. So it's kind of this beginning, it was going to be a smaller book on parenting, and then it grew into this handbook. I mean, I actually have my copy here. I mean, it is 226,000 words. It's 16 chapters. I'm using the word handbook like it's a massive kind of resource, I'm hoping, for parents and leaders.
Well, it is a great resource. I mean, I saw so many things, and something was pretty cool, but also I thought was interesting was the report card for parents. Talk to us about that.
It was just, to me, parents and kids need good conversation. And so I created this report card for parents, which is, now this is not for something for a kid in grade 2. We're looking at probably grade 7 and 8 through high school. But it's just a way to give your kid a quick test on how you are being as a parent. Like the way we get better, like if you're wanting to go to a gym and work out, is you have a trainer assess you and see where you're at. But with parenting, we don't really have that. So I thought this is just a great way to ask your kids some good questions. But here's the real core of this is you need to be willing to listen to what your kid says and then actually, be able to work with some of those things in having that good relationship to start with.
Wow. With e-learning and everything and all the education system shifting, who's this book for and who really needs to get a hold of this one, Brett?
Well, it's for parents and parents of kids of all ages. I worked really hard to make sure it's not just like I have teenagers, but it's not just for teens. And the truth is, things that teenagers are dealing with today, technology, pornography, mental health, are the same things that a grade 3 kid is dealing with today. So made for a parent of kids of any age. But all the topical chapters were written in 2 ways. They're written for someone struggling with mental health, someone struggling with pornography, with parenting conversations throughout, rather than having another book for someone on mental health. This way, it's kind of one book and you can read it as a parent and then get maybe well mentally, physically, spiritually, whatever, but then also look at how to help your kid with that as well.
I was so stoked with this because, when you talk about the parent queue and growing ladder and everything, you give so many resources. And this is like a handbook, but it also is a go-to where you can thumb through. When you think about as far as where you were going with this, the practical advice, what would you share right now? There's something in the book that a parent would need in this moment.
If I had to say 2 things to start today, one would be family dinners. I know parents who are still not eating dinners with their families, even though many of us are still at home all the time. There's so many benefits of eating together as a family. And number 2 would be something that it's called a family meeting. Like meet together, like every August, sit down as a family and talk about how the next year will be. We're going to be a Christian home. How does that look like? What are we going to do for our mind, our body, our soul? Like look through all those things as a parent. I actually have a YouTube video on that, but those are practical places to start. And then you kind of build off from there.
When you talk about parenting, navigating everywhere, where can we get this, Brett?
So my website's just my name, brettullman.com. And on that, you can find resources. We have probably 1,000 blogs and articles and off to all the different conversations we're talking about. But you can also find that on my store. And there's booking information for speaking and stuff. Any bookstore, many of the Christian bookstores, Chapters, Indigo, and it will be on Amazon as well. So it's basically anywhere you buy books today.
Could you do me a favor and just pray with the parents right now that are just saying, I just need to connect with my kids and I feel like I'm losing them and I need help?
For sure. Let's just pray quick. God, we just pray today for parents. And there's so many types of parents. Parents in 2 parents homes, single parents, you name it. God, we just ask today for a kind of just a renewal of relationship with our children. And God, just give us, those conversations we need to have with our kids so that we can help equip and empower our kids for the life they're living now, but especially as we head into school in September. God, we just ask this in your name. Amen.
Amen. Brett Ullman, my friend, parenting, navigating everything. In a pandemic, a go-to. So you got to get a hold of that. Thank you for being with us. Looking forward to hearing more about what God is doing in your life as well.
Thanks for having me.
Well, after this, we get an opportunity to find Lauren. She discovered what true beauty was all about. Take a look.